Hello everyone. Today I am going to show you how to do the stitching for a traditional hardcover sketchbook. So at this point you have already folded your pages for your signatures, you've measured your holes and poked your holes on your signatures, you've measured and cut your string. So today what we're going to do is the actual stitching. So when I thread my needle, I'm going to have a short end and then the long end, and none of that is going to have a knot. We're not going to use any knots just yet. So our first signature, what we are going to do, I like to hold it like a tent, and we are going to go in from the outside here. So my holes are nice and large, ready to take that needle, and what I am going to do is I'm going to pull my thread all the way through so that I have a short tail on the outside here. So I'm on the inside, so I'm going to come out this hole next door, and I'm going to pull all my thread through and leave that little tail here. So on the inside, I'll start connecting those dots, but I'm going to keep holding it like a tent so that it's easy to stitch through and not get my thread tangled. So I'm outside here, I'm going to go next door and pull my thread through, and it's going to create a line across the top now, and you can always get this tighter later. I just don't want to pull my tail out here. And then I'm going to come down to the end here, pulling my thread all the way through. All right, nice and taut across there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my next signature, and the really important thing is to make sure that my holes line up. So we very purposely measured this so that one hole is a little closer to the edge, one hole comes in a little bit further. So I hold both of my signatures like a tent, so I hold them in the middle right there, and any time now that I am on the outside, I'm going to jump across the street directly across the hole that I'm out of. So this is going to connect our signatures together. These are really important steps. So pulling my needle through, going through the second signature directly across the street, kind of like you're staying in the crosswalk, and you are going to pull that thread so that it connects the signatures across from each other. So what's nice about holding these like a tent is I can drag my needle across the fold. So inside here, I can drag my needle across the fold till I get to this hole here. So I don't want to keep flipping it back and forth because I can get these tangled and confused. So what I do is I drag my needle across until it comes out. So rule of thumb, anytime I'm outside, I go inside. Anytime I'm inside, I go next door and I come outside. So I'm pulling my thread all the way through. All right, so it just made a line across on the inside here. So now what I need to do is I need to go back to the previous signature. So just like I said before, I'm outside, I have to go inside, and you want to make sure that you don't stitch your thread, otherwise you won't be able to pull it tight. So I'm going to put this in my hole across the street, always connect right across, pulling that through into the previous signature. And your thread, of course, always gets a little tangled. That's okay. All right, so now I'm inside. I got to move on down the block, and I got to come outside this hole next door. So this is where I went in. I'm coming out next door here. So pushing my needle through, coming out on top, and I'm outside, so I'm going to connect directly across the street into that signature, connecting the two signatures. This is a really important step. Every hole needs to be connected all the way across. So when you get to the end, in order to stay on the outside, there's a little trick that we do. So the first two signatures, what we are going to do is when we come to the end of the block, so I'm inside, I'm coming outside right here to the end of the block. I'm going to pull this nice and taut, all right, giving my two signatures a good tug. Now here, what I'm going to do, I have to stay on the outside, but these two are loose, so I'm going to tie these two together just like I'd be tying a knot in my shoelaces. All right, so just double your knot like that. You could even triple it. It's going to get glued later. Okay, and now what you're ready for is the next signature. So My needle is on the outside. I want to make sure I don't go in any hole at the end. And there's a special stitch that we do when we get to the end of the block. So now my first two signatures are stitched together. I'm going to add the third one, and the first thing that I do is I check to make sure that all my holes line up. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right across the street directly from the outside where I am into the third signature. All right, so I'm going to pull my needle taut. I kind of like to grab my thread like that so that it doesn't come out of my needle. It still happens to me. The needle is big, the thread is small. All right, so now I'm connected between these two. So I'm inside, my thread is inside the third signature. I'm coming out the neighbor's house right next door. All right, it's like you're going through the alley, coming out next door. And again, rule of thumb, anytime you are outside, you want to go inside, directly across the street. So I'm always going to go into the previous signature, not the first one, the previous signature. If you keep going back into the first one, you're going to run out of thread. So I go across the street into that previous signature, which would be signature number 2. If I can grab my thread here. There we go. All right, pulling that taut. And I'm on the inside of signature number 2. So I'm coming out the neighbor's house next door. So I went in here. I'm coming out here. All right, pulling that nice and taut. Again, going across the street into that neighbor's house. They're having lasagna for dinner. It sounds good. We'll visit them. So into the third signature. Pulling that nice and taut. Remember, it's really important to make sure that these are all connected across the street. And now we're coming to the end. So I'm coming out. So remember, anytime I'm inside, I got to come outside. Coming out the neighbor's house at the end of the block. But here's the thing. Stranger danger. Don't go in that house. Do not go in there. If you go in there at the end of the signature, you will not be able to connect your next signature. So somehow we have to connect these two and then be able to add the next signature. So I'm going to do the kettle stitch right underneath that piece of thread that connected the first and second signatures. And I'm going to just go right underneath that with my needle, pulling my thread taut. And now I'm safe. I'm on the outside. I can add my next signature. So you're going to follow that exact same path all the way down for as many signatures as you have. So anytime you're outside, go across the street into that neighbor's house. Anytime you're inside, come out next door. Always connect to the previous signature. Come out next door, directly across the street again. So it's almost like you're kind of making like this little H in the middle. And when you come to the end of the block, you're going to do that special stitch. Remember, stranger danger. Don't go in that house. You're going to do that stitch. That's called a kettle stitch. You're going to go underneath the piece of thread so you can come out and add your last signature. So you're just going to follow that same pattern for all the signatures that you have for your book.